Picture this: a beautiful sunny day at the local amusement park. Families are everywhere, kids are laughing, the scent of popcorn and cotton candy fills the air, and the sounds of roller coasters rushing by can be heard in the background. It's a day made for fun, smiles, and memories that will last a lifetime. But what happens next is something no one expected, an encounter that would leave everyone there absolutely stunned. Meet the Johnsons, a kind and joyful black family just trying to enjoy their day. Marcus and Lisa, the proud parents of two energetic little ones, Jordan, 10, and Maya, 7, are waiting in line for one of the park's most popular rides. They've been looking forward to this family trip for weeks. Jordan is practically bouncing with excitement, clutching his ticket in hand, while Maya can't stop talking about how fast the ride is going to be. It's a moment of pure happiness, the kind that warms your heart. But just as the Johnson family is about to step forward for their turn on the ride, something shifts. Enter Karen, a middle-aged woman who seems to be in a bit of a hurry. You can see it in the way she marches toward the front of the line, her face tight with impatience. She cuts through the crowd with determination, her eyes locked on the Johnsons. And then it happens. With no hesitation, Karen speaks up, her voice sharp and cutting through the happy chatter of the park. "Excuse me," she snaps, glaring at Marcus and Lisa. "I believe you're in the wrong place. This line is for people who actually have tickets, not for..." Cutting in. The Johnsons are taken aback. For a moment, there's silence. You can see the confusion in Lisa's eyes as she instinctively pulls her children a little closer. Marcus, ever the calm one, responds politely, "We do have tickets. We've been waiting here just like everyone else." But Karen isn't convinced. She crosses her arms and huffs, looking around as if searching for backup. "I don't think so," she insists, her voice growing louder. "I saw you come up here after us. You can't just cut in line like this." The people around them start to notice, some exchanging uneasy glances, but no one steps in. It's clear to everyone that the Johnsons have been standing in line just like everyone else, yet Karen seems determined to make a scene. Now, here's where things start to get really tense. Lisa, who's usually the peacemaker, can feel her heart racing. She knows exactly what's happening, even if Karen won't say it out loud. It's not about the line. It's about something deeper, something uglier. But before she can even decide how to respond, Jordan speaks up. "But Mom, we've been here the whole time," he says, his voice small but full of confusion. It's the kind of question no parent ever wants their child to have to ask. The kind of moment that makes you realize how unfair the world can be. And then, just as Marcus is about to respond, Karen does something no one saw coming. She steps forward, closer to the Johnsons, her voice rising. "I don't care what you say. People like you are always trying to get away with something. You don't belong here anyway." The entire crowd goes silent. The tension in the air is thick, almost unbearable. You can see Lisa's face tighten as she takes a deep breath, trying to stay composed for her kids. Marcus stands tall, but you can tell he's struggling to keep his cool. Everyone is watching, waiting to see what will happen next. Will they speak up? Will someone else finally intervene? And then, out of nowhere, something happens that leaves the entire park speechless. A voice, calm, steady, and completely unexpected, cuts through the tension. But that's where we'll leave it for now. What could this unexpected turn be? How will the Johnson family handle this confrontation? And what's the unbelievable twist waiting at the end of this story? Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you absolutely shocked. You won't want to miss it. The silence that followed Karen's harsh words seemed to stretch on forever. The whole crowd stood still, holding their breath, unsure of what might happen next. Marcus remained calm on the outside, but inside, he could feel a mix of frustration and disbelief swirling around. He wasn't just angry, he was hurt. hurt that his family had to experience this on a day that was supposed to be about joy, hurt that, once again, their presence in a public space was being questioned simply because of who they were. Lisa, on the other hand, felt her pulse quicken. She kept her arms around Jordan and Maya, pulling them just a bit closer, as if her embrace could shield them from the ugliness of the moment. She could see the confusion on their faces, the innocence in their eyes, still not fully understanding why this was happening. The last thing she wanted was for her children to see the world like this, but here it was, unavoidable, right in front of them. Just then, a voice cut through the tension. It wasn't loud, but it was firm. "Excuse me, ma'am, but I think you need to take a step back." Everyone turned to see where the voice came from. A park employee, wearing a bright uniform with the amusement park's logo, had approached. She was young, probably in her early 20s, and though her voice was steady, you could tell she was nervous. She looked from Karen to the Johnson family, clearly understanding the situation but unsure of how to handle it delicately. Karen's eyes flashed with indignation. "Are you serious?" she snapped, her voice dripping with frustration. "This family just cut the entire line, and no one's doing anything about it." The park employee blinked, taken aback by Karen's aggression, but she didn't back down. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this family has been in line just like everyone else. If you have an issue, you can take it up with guest services, but I'm going to have to ask you to stop causing a scene." You could almost feel the crowd collectively exhale, as if someone had finally said what everyone was thinking. A few people nodded in agreement, while others murmured quietly to each other, clearly siding with the Johnsons. But Karen wasn't done yet. She crossed her arms tightly across her chest, looking even more outraged. "This is unbelievable," she muttered under her breath, shaking her head. Then, louder, she added, "Of course you're going to take their side. This is the problem with this place. No one follows the rules anymore." Marcus could feel the anger rising in his chest, but he swallowed it down, not wanting to escalate the situation. He had learned, through too many similar experiences, that losing his temper wouldn't help. He gave the park employee a small nod of appreciation, but Karen's words still hung heavy in the air. Before anyone could respond, a small voice spoke up again. This time, it was Maya. "But we didn't do anything wrong," she said, her wide eyes filled with a mix of confusion and hurt. "We just want to go on the ride." Her innocence was heartbreaking, and for a moment, everyone was silent again. Even Karen paused, though her expression remained hard. It was one of those moments that could go either way. Would Karen back down, realizing how ridiculous and hurtful she was being? Or would she double down, refusing to admit she was in the wrong? The park employee looked at Maya, her expression softening. "I know, sweetie," she said gently. "And you're going to get your turn. Don't worry." She turned back to Karen, her voice now more authoritative. "Ma'am, I need you to either get back in line or step aside. This family hasn't done anything wrong." Karen stared at the employee for a long moment, her lips pressed into a thin line. You could tell she was weighing her options, trying to decide if it was worth continuing the argument. The crowd was still watching, but now the mood had shifted. Where before there had been tension, now there was a clear sense of solidarity with the Johnsons. People were tired of the confrontation, tired of Karen's attitude. Finally, Karen let out a loud, exaggerated sigh. "Fine," she huffed, throwing her hands up in mock surrender. "But don't say I didn't warn you. You let people like this get away with things, and it ruins everything." And with that, she turned on her heel and stormed off, muttering under her breath as she pushed past the crowd. The tension that had been building for what felt like hours suddenly lifted, and there was a collective sense of relief. The park employee gave Marcus and Lisa a small smile, her face still a little flushed from the confrontation. "I'm really sorry about that," she said, sounding genuinely apologetic. "You guys go ahead and enjoy your day. If you need anything, just let us know." Marcus nodded, still too shaken to say much. Lisa managed a quiet "thank you" before turning her attention back to her children. Jordan and Maya, though still a bit confused, seemed to sense that the worst was over. As they moved forward to finally take their turn on the ride, Lisa couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Relief that Karen was gone, but also a lingering sadness that this was the kind of thing her children were already having to witness. The ride itself was fast and thrilling, a brief escape from the heaviness of what had just happened. But as they got off and started walking through the park again, it was clear that the moment had left a mark. Marcus was quieter than usual, and Lisa noticed that Jordan, who had been so excited earlier, was now much more subdued. Maya clung to her mother's hand a little tighter than before. They stopped by a small bench near one of the snack stands, sitting down for a moment to regroup. Lisa looked over at Marcus, her voice low. "You okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were distant. "Yeah," he said after a moment. "I just hate that the kids had to see that." Lisa reached over and put her hand on his. "I know," she said softly, "but we handled it. We didn't let her get to us." Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Yeah, we did." He paused, glancing over at the kids. "Still, I hate that they had to see it." Jordan, who had been sitting quietly next to them, suddenly spoke up. "Why did she say we didn't belong here, Dad?" Marcus looked at his son, his heart aching. How could he explain this in a way that wouldn't completely shatter his son's view of the world? He wanted to protect Jordan, to shield him from the ugliness they had just encountered. But he also knew he couldn't lie. "Well, buddy," Marcus began slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes people judge others without really knowing them. They might think certain things about someone just because of how they look, and that's wrong. But what's important is that we know who we are, and we don't let people like that make us feel less than we are." Jordan looked thoughtful, but still confused. "But we didn't do anything wrong," he said again, echoing his sister's earlier words. "I know," Marcus said, his voice firm. "And that's what you always have to remember. You didn't do anything wrong. Some people just don't see things clearly." Maya, who had been quiet for a while, tugged on Lisa's sleeve. "Mom, is that lady gone for good?" Lisa smiled softly at her daughter. "Yes, sweetie, she's gone. We don't have to worry about her anymore." They sat there for a while longer, just letting the moments settle. Families walked by, laughing and enjoying the park, seemingly oblivious to the encounter that had just taken place. For the Johnsons, the day had taken an unexpected turn, and though they tried to move past it, the experience lingered in the back of their minds. As they got up and continued walking through the park, it was clear that this wasn't something they could easily shake off. The encounter with Karen had left a mark, not just on their day, but on their hearts. They knew that, unfortunately, this wouldn't be the last time they would face something like this. But they also knew that, as a family, they would face it together. And just as they were beginning to relax again, something caught their attention. Off in the distance, near one of the park's other attractions, they spotted a familiar figure. It was Karen, except this time she wasn't alone. There was a small group gathered around her, and she was pointing and gesturing wildly, clearly upset about something else. Marcus and Lisa exchanged a glance. Could it be happening again? As Marcus and Lisa stood there, their eyes locked on Karen in the distance, they could hardly believe what they were seeing. After the earlier confrontation, they had hoped she would move on, maybe take her anger somewhere else and let them enjoy the rest of their day in peace. But there she was, causing another scene, her gestures wild and her voice carrying over the noise of the park. Marcus sighed deeply. "Unbelievable," he muttered under his breath. His instinct was to walk the other way, to steer his family far from whatever chaos Karen was stirring up now. But something held him in place, a mix of curiosity and unease. What could she possibly be upset about this time? And why was she gathering a crowd around her? Lisa, sensing Marcus's hesitation, glanced down at the kids. Maya was still holding tight to her hand, and Jordan seemed distracted, looking off toward the next ride he wanted to go on. Maybe they could just ignore it, let Karen be someone else's problem. But then, just as they were about to turn away, they heard Karen's voice rise above the crowd again, this time with a familiar accusation. "There, that's them. They've been causing trouble all over the park, and no one's doing anything about it." Marcus's stomach dropped as he realized Karen was pointing directly at them. A cold, sinking feeling washed over him. What now? He glanced at Lisa, whose eyes had gone wide with disbelief. Could this really be happening again, and in front of so many people? Lisa whispered under her breath, "She's trying to turn this whole thing into something bigger." They both knew this wasn't just about cutting in line anymore. Karen was escalating the situation, trying to make them out to be the problem. It wasn't enough for her to confront them earlier. Now she was trying to rally others to her side. And the worst part, the crowd seemed to be paying attention. The group surrounding Karen looked confused but interested. Some were whispering to each other, while others craned their necks to get a better view of the Johnson family. Marcus could see a couple of people shaking their heads, but others were nodding as if Karen's words were starting to make sense to them. The unease in air was palpable. Lisa, ever the protector, knelt down to Maya's level. "Sweetie," she said softly, "we're going to stay together, okay? Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine." Maya nodded, though her grip on Lisa's hand tightened even more. Jordan, sensing something was wrong, stepped closer to his dad. "Why is she pointing at us, Dad?" he asked quietly. Marcus swallowed hard, forcing a calm smile for his son's sake. "She's just confused, buddy. We didn't do anything wrong, remember?" But even as he said it, Marcus felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He could tell that Karen wasn't going to back off this time. She was determined to make them the villains of the day. And now, with a crowd around her, she had an audience. People were watching, listening, and worst of all, some were starting to believe her. Before Marcus could decide what to do next, a park security guard appeared, pushing his way through the crowd. He was tall, stocky, and wearing the standard uniform, his face a mask of professional neutrality. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, his voice deep and authoritative. Karen wasted no time jumping in. "The problem is this family," she exclaimed, pointing at Marcus, Lisa, and the kids with a dramatic sweep of her arm. "They've been causing trouble all over the park, cutting in line, being rude to other guests, and now they're here again, disrupting everything." Marcus felt a wave of frustration and disbelief wash over him. How could she twist the situation so completely? He wanted to shout, to tell the guard that it was Karen who had been harassing them, not the other way around. But before he could speak, Karen continued, her voice growing more dramatic by second. "I don't know why no one's done anything yet," she added, shaking her head as if she were the victim of some great injustice. "It's people like this that ruin the experience for everyone else." The guard looked from Karen to Marcus, his expression unreadable. He was clearly trying to assess the situation. But the longer he stayed silent, the more Marcus felt the pressure building. This wasn't just about a disagreement anymore. Karen had managed to spin a narrative where the Johnson family was the problem, and now they had to defend themselves, again. Lisa, always composed in the face of conflict, stepped forward, her voice steady but firm. "Sir, we've been minding our own business. This woman has been harassing us since we got in line for the ride earlier. We haven't done anything wrong." The guard turned his attention to Lisa, his eyes narrowing slightly as he tried to piece together the truth. But before he could respond, a voice from the crowd spoke up. "That's right," a man in a red baseball cap said, stepping forward. "I saw the whole thing earlier. This family didn't do anything. She's the one who was causing all the trouble." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd as the man's words started to shift the tide. Karen's expression faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered, turning on the man with an icy glare. "You weren't even there," she snapped. "You don't know what you're talking about." But now, more voices were chiming in. "Yeah, I saw it too," a woman with a stroller said. "They were just standing in line like everyone else. This lady's been making a scene all day." Karen's face turned red with anger, her fists clenched at her sides. "You're all just taking their side because..." She stopped herself just in time, realizing she was about to say something she couldn't take back. But the implication hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Everyone knew what she had been about to say. The tension, which had seemed like it was about to break, suddenly thickened again. Marcus, sensing the moment, finally spoke up. "Look, we came here to enjoy the park with our kids, just like everyone else. We don't want any trouble. We just want to be left alone." The guard nodded slowly, his eyes flicking back to Karen. "Ma'am," he said, his tone more direct now, "I'm going to need you to step aside. If you have a complaint, you can take it up with guest services, but you can't keep harassing other guests." For a moment, Karen looked like she might explode. Her face was flushed, and her eyes flashed with a mix of fury and disbelief. But then, in a moment of surprising restraint, she threw up her hands. "Fine," she spat. "But this isn't over. People like that always get away with things." And with that, she stormed off, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement as she disappeared into the crowd. The people who had gathered around slowly began to disperse, most of them shaking their heads or whispering quietly to each other. Some shot apologetic glances at the Johnson family, as if silently acknowledging the injustice of what had just happened. The security guard, now looking somewhat relieved, turned back to Marcus and Lisa. "I'm sorry about all this," he said, his voice softer now. "You're not in any trouble. Just try to enjoy the rest of your day." Marcus nodded, though the tightness in his chest hadn't fully gone away. Lisa thanked the guard, her tone polite but distant. They both knew that while Karen might have been gone for now, the experience had left a bitter taste that wouldn't fade so easily. As the family walked away from the scene, heading toward a quieter part of the park, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. Karen's parting words echoed in his mind. This isn't over. What had she meant by that? Was she just spouting off in anger, or was there something more to it? Lisa, sensing his unease, looked over at him. "You think she's going to try something else?" she asked quietly, keeping her voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. Marcus shrugged, though he couldn't hide the concern in his eyes. "I don't know," he admitted. "But something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me." They continued walking in silence for a few minutes, the cheerful sounds of the parks seeming almost surreal after what had just happened. Jordan and Maya were starting to perk up again, the earlier tension fading from their young minds as they got caught up in the excitement of the next ride they wanted to go on. But for Marcus and Lisa, the day had taken a darker turn. Just as they were about to head toward the Ferris wheel, Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting a message from a friend or maybe a work email. But what he saw on the screen made his stomach drop. It was a notification from one of his social media accounts. Someone had tagged him in a post. Curious but wary, he opened the app. And there it was. A video. A video of the entire confrontation with Karen, from the moment she had first approached them in line to the argument with the security guard. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the caption. In bold letters, it read, "Entitled family, think in case they can keep the line and get away with it." Marcus felt his blood run cold as he scrolled through the comments. People were already weighing in, most of them siding with Karen, calling the Johnson family names, accusing them of trying to play the victim. Some of the comments were downright hateful, filled with the kind of ugliness Marcus had hoped his family would never have to see. He handed the phone to Lisa, who read the post in stunned silence. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "She's trying to ruin us online now." Marcus nodded grimly. "And it's working. People are already buying into her story." They both knew what this meant. The confrontation at the park was only the beginning. Now, thanks to the power of social media, the conflict was spreading, and there was no telling how far it would go. Marcus stared at the screen, a mix of disbelief and anger coursing through him. The video of the confrontation was spreading like wildfire, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Comments poured in, some harsh, others mocking, and a few attempting to defend them, but they were drowned out by the sheer volume of negativity. How did Karen manage to turn the situation around so completely? Lisa's eyes darkened as she took in the words. "We need to do something," she said, her voice low but filled with determination. "This isn't just about us anymore. If people believe her, it could affect our jobs, our reputation, everything." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. They couldn't just let this slide. They had to fight back, not just for themselves, but for the kids who were already feeling the weight of this ridiculous situation. "We need to record our own side of the story," he said, feeling a spark of hope ignite in him. "If we can get our truth out there, maybe we can turn this around." They found a quieter spot near the park's food stalls, away from the noise and the crowd. Lisa took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Let's do it. We'll explain what really happened, and we'll make sure to include how she was the one causing trouble." As they set up to film, Jordan and Maya looked on, their faces a mixture of confusion and concern. They didn't fully understand the gravity of what was happening, but they could sense that their parents were on edge. Marcus knelt down to their level, forcing a smile. "Hey, we're just going to tell our story so everyone knows truth, okay? You can help us by being brave." Jordan nodded, but Marcus could see the worry in his eyes. Maya clutched her stuffed toy, looking between her parents and the camera. "Are we going to be okay?" she asked, her small voice trembling slightly. "Of course," Lisa reassured her. "We just have to stand together." With the kids nearby, Marcus and Lisa began recording their video, pouring their hearts into the explanation of what had happened. They spoke calmly and clearly, detailing the initial confrontation, the harassment, and how they had handled it. Lisa emphasized the importance of kindness and understanding, while Marcus highlighted the unfairness of being judged based on appearance. As they finished, Marcus felt a sense of relief. They had taken back their narrative, and now it was time to share it with the world. They uploaded the video to their social media accounts, hoping it would reach those who had already seen Karen's post. After hitting publish, they shared it widely, tagging the amusement park and encouraging others to share their experience. They waited anxiously for responses, watching the comments on both videos like hawks. Slowly, their video began to gain traction. A few of the same people who had initially commented on Karen's post began to see their side, some sharing stories of their own experiences with bullying and harassment. The tide was beginning to shift, but just as they felt a glimmer of hope, a notification popped up on Marcus's phone that made his heart sink again. It was a direct message from someone named Amusement Park Watcher. Curious and cautious, he opened it to read, "You better watch your back. Karen has friends, and she's not done with you yet." Fear washed over him. Had they underestimated her? The reality that this could escalate further loomed large, and he shared the message with Lisa. "What if she tries to retaliate?" he asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. "I don't know," she admitted, her face pale. "But we need to stay vigilant. Let's keep an eye out for the rest of the day." They decided to stick close together, making their way around the park with Jordan and Maya in tow. They visited a few more rides, trying to keep spirits high, but the underlying tension never fully faded. The idea that Karen could reappear at any moment weighed heavily on them. After a while, they found themselves at a carnival game booth. The kids wanted to play, their excitement infectious. Marcus and Lisa exchanged a glance, and Marcus felt a small spark of normalcy. They could still enjoy the day, couldn't they? They laughed as Jordan tried his hand at winning a stuffed animal, and Maya squealed with joy every time he hit a target. But then, just as they were about to leave, Marcus spotted a familiar figure out of the corner of his eye. It was Karen, and she was standing with a group of people who seemed to be her friends. They were all watching him and Lisa intently, their expressions a mix of smug satisfaction and hostility. "Let's go," Marcus said, his voice low but urgent. He gently tugged at Lisa's arm, steering the family away from the booth. "Do you think she saw us?" Lisa asked, glancing over her shoulder. "I'm not taking any chances," Marcus replied. He could feel his heart racing as they moved quickly toward the park exit. But just as they rounded a corner, they were met with another surprise. A group of teenagers stood blocking their path, looking like they were waiting for someone. Marcus's stomach dropped again. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice tight with apprehension. One of the teens stepped forward, a tall girl with pink hair. "Hey, are you the family from that video?" she asked, her tone curious but not hostile. Before Marcus could respond, another teen piped up. "We've been watching everything. We're with a group that supports families who get bullied, and we just wanted to let you know that we're on your side." The unexpected support sent a rush of relief through Marcus and Lisa. "Thank you," Lisa said, her voice shaky with emotion. "We really appreciate it. Things have gotten out of hand." Jordan and Maya looked at each other, confused but clearly intrigued by the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The kids had seen so much negativity in the past few hours that it was refreshing to see people coming together for a good cause. The group of teens smiled and shared stories of their own experiences, expressing how important it was to stand up against bullying and support one another. But just as they were starting to feel a sense of camaraderie, they heard a loud voice call out from behind them. "Hey! What's going on here?" It was Karen, and she was marching toward them, her expression furious. She was flanked by two of her friends, and Marcus felt the tension rise again as the atmosphere shifted back to hostility. "What are you doing talking to them?" she demanded, pointing a finger at the teens. "You shouldn't be associating with troublemakers." The teens exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from support to concern. "We're just trying to help," the pink-haired girl said defiantly. "You don't get to bully them just because you want to cause drama." Karen stepped forward, looking ready for a fight. "You don't know what you're talking about. They're the ones who started this whole mess." Suddenly, the air was thick with conflict again. Marcus felt his heart racing, not knowing how this would play out. Would Karen's friends back her up, or would the support of the teens tip the scales? Before anything could escalate, Lisa, taking a deep breath, stepped forward. "Enough," she called out, her voice firm. "We're done with this. Karen, you've made your point, but you've taken it too far. You need to walk away." Karen's face twisted in anger, but the crowd was gathering, people starting to pull out their phones again, and something shifted in her expression. It was one thing to bully them. It was another to do it while being recorded. For a moment, she seemed to hesitate, caught between her pride and the reality of the situation. Just then, something even more unexpected happened. Another family approached, recognizing Marcus and Lisa from their video. "We saw what happened," the mother called out, her voice steady and strong. "You're not alone. We want to support you." A wave of solidarity swept through the crowd. More people began to join in, expressing their support for the Johnsons and their disdain for Karen's actions. It was like a dam had broken, and suddenly the tide was turning in their favor. "See!" One of the teens shouted at Karen. "You're outnumbered. You can't keep treating people like this." Feeling the weight of the crowd's support, Karen's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. It was clear she hadn't expected the situation to spiral out of her control. "This isn't over," she spat, before turning sharply on her heel and storming away, her friends trailing behind her, stunned and silent. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus and Lisa found themselves surrounded by supportive faces. The teens and the families who had come to their defense gathered around, offering words of encouragement and sharing their own stories. For the first time all day, they felt a sense of community and belonging. But then, just as they were beginning to bask in this newfound support, Marcus's phone buzzed again. It was another notification. This time, it was a video from Karen. The caption read, "You'll regret this. I'm not done yet." Marcus's heart sank. It was far from over. The stakes were still high, and Karen's wrath was far from extinguished. But now, they weren't facing it alone. They had allies. They had their story, their truth, and a community ready to stand by them. As they prepared to leave the park, holding hands and walking side by side, the air felt charged with possibility. They knew they were entering a new phase of the conflict, one that would take courage and resilience. But they were ready to face whatever came next, together. The drive home from the amusement park felt different than before. As they cruised down the familiar streets, Marcus and Lisa exchanged glances, each silently processing the whirlwind of emotions they had just experienced. The kids sat in the back, chatting animatedly about their day, blissfully unaware of the storm that had nearly consumed them. For them, the day had been filled with laughter, excitement, and a sense of adventure. For their parents, it had been a battle for dignity and justice. As they pulled into the driveway, Marcus's phone buzzed incessantly. He had posted a brief update about the day's events, thanking everyone for their support, and the response had been overwhelming. Friends, family, and even strangers had rallied behind them, sharing messages of solidarity. It felt good to know they weren't alone in this fight. He opened the app to see a flood of notifications, and as he read through the comments, a smile spread across his face. "Look at this, Lisa," he called out, excitement bubbling in his voice. "People are really coming together for us." Lisa leaned over to take a look. "Wow, it's amazing how many people are supporting us. I didn't expect this." Marcus nodded. "I think we should do something to keep the momentum going. Maybe start a campaign against bullying. We can use our story to raise awareness." Lisa's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "That's a great idea. We can share resources, create a support network for families who've gone through similar experiences. We need to turn this negativity into something positive." In the following weeks, they worked tirelessly to build their campaign. They collaborated with local community leaders, set up workshops, and shared their story through social media platforms. Their mission was simple: to empower others to speak up against bullying and harassment, no matter where it happened. The Johnsons began hosting meetups at local parks, inviting families to share their experiences and build a network of support. Each meeting brought new faces, and each story shared was a reminder that they were not alone in their struggles. Meanwhile, Karen was still lurking in the background. She continued to post about the incident online, twisting the narrative in her favor, trying to paint herself as the victim. However, as the Johnsons' campaign grew, so did the backlash against her. People began to share their own encounters with her, revealing a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. Slowly but surely, Karen's influence began to wane, and the support for Marcus and Lisa continued to swell. One evening, as they were preparing for a community event, a familiar face appeared at their doorstep. It was the pink-haired girl from the amusement park, her friends in tow. "Hey, we wanted to see how you guys were doing," she said, her enthusiasm infectious. "We heard about the campaign and wanted to help." Marcus and Lisa exchanged delighted glances. "That would be amazing," Lisa said, her voice full of warmth. "We could use all the help we can get." As the teenagers joined their efforts, they brought fresh ideas and energy to the campaign. They created eye-catching flyers and started a social media challenge encouraging people to share their stories of resilience and support. The movement began to gain traction, with more and more people coming forward to share their experiences. The hashtag #StandWithTheJohnson started trending, connecting families across the country. One day, as Marcus was scrolling through the latest posts, he came across a video that made his heart swell. It was a compilation of stories from families who had faced bullying and discrimination. Each person spoke with honesty and vulnerability, showcasing their strength in the face of adversity. As the video ended, a powerful message flashed on the screen. Together, we can create change. In that moment, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just fighting against Karen, they were standing up for something much larger. They were part of a movement that sought to challenge intolerance and promote kindness in their communities. They had taken their pain and transformed it into a beacon of hope for others. The culmination of their hard work led to a community event where they invited speakers to share their experiences and resources for coping with bullying. The day was filled with laughter, connection, and healing. Families gathered, sharing food, stories, and support. As Marcus looked around, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had turned a painful experience into something that could help others. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Marcus took a moment to reflect on the journey. Lisa joined him, wrapping her arm around his waist. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. "It's incredible," he replied, his heart swelling with pride. "I never imagined we'd be able to turn this around like this." Just then, they heard Jordan's laughter nearby, and they turned to see him sharing a joke with Maya and their new friends. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and belonging. They had created something meaningful from their struggle, and the kids were thriving amidst the support of their community. But just as Marcus began to relax, a voice broke through the chatter. "Excuse me, is this where the Johnsons are?" It was a woman he recognized from the videos that had circulated about Karen. "I have something important to tell you." With curiosity and a hint of trepidation, Marcus and Lisa turned to face her. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, a slight knot forming in his stomach. "I'm a reporter," she explained, her expression serious. "And I've been following the story about your campaign and what happened at the amusement park. I want to give you a chance to tell your side to a wider audience. I think your message is powerful and could really resonate with people." Lisa exchanged a glance with Marcus, her eyes wide with surprise. "Really? You think people would want to hear about this?" "Absolutely," the reporter replied. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's a conversation that needs to be had, and your story could help others who are suffering in silence." Marcus felt a rush of emotions. This was an opportunity to amplify their message, to reach even more people who needed to hear about resilience in the face of adversity. They discussed it briefly, weighing the pros and cons, but ultimately, they knew they couldn't pass up the chance to share their truth. A few days later, they sat down with the reporter, sharing their experiences, the struggles they faced, and the positive changes that had emerged from their ordeal. As the interview unfolded, they spoke not just about the confrontation, but also about the importance of community support, empathy, and understanding. They wanted to encourage others to stand up against bullying and make their voices heard. When the article was published, it exploded on social media. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, filled with support, love, and gratitude for the Johnson family's courage to share their story. They received messages from people across the country who had faced similar challenges, and the outpouring of kindness reignited their hope for a better future. As the campaign continued to grow, Marcus and Lisa realized that they had not just created a movement, they had sparked a change in their community. Schools began implementing anti-bullying programs, local businesses offered support, and families came together to foster a culture of acceptance and understanding. In the weeks that followed, they received an unexpected message from Karen. She reached out to apologize for her behavior and acknowledged the pain she had caused. It was a surprising twist, and while they were initially skeptical, they decided to give her a chance. They met in a public space, surrounded by friends and supporters. To their surprise, Karen was genuinely remorseful. She admitted that her actions were fueled by her own insecurities and that she had acted out of fear. It was a humbling moment for both sides. They agreed to move forward with understanding and healing. As the sun set on that day, Marcus, Lisa, Jordan, and Maya walked home hand in hand. The journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought them closer together and forged connections they never expected. They had emerged stronger, and their message of kindness and resilience resonated with everyone around them. Reflecting on the entire experience, Marcus felt grateful. The confrontation at the amusement park had sparked something much larger than he had anticipated. It had brought people together, ignited a movement, and most importantly, taught them all valuable lessons about empathy, courage, and the power of community. As they arrived home, the kids rushed inside, chattering excitedly about the day's events. Marcus and Lisa lingered for a moment, taking it all in. They knew they had made a difference, not just in their lives, but in the lives of countless others. And as they closed the door behind them, they felt a renewed sense of hope, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together.